free yourself from suffering for sleep, a guided meditation for your sleep, spoken by myself, Lauren. In this guided meditation, we're going to journey through a gentle meditation to help you free yourself from any suffering you're experiencing at this time, to help you journey into a deep, restorative, and calming sleep. Before you start this guided meditation, find yourself a dedicated space, a sacred space in which you may meditate. This may be a meditation stool or cushion, a yoga mat upon your floor, a comfortable chair, or your bed. Because this meditation is designed for sleep, I suggest your bed so that you can continue to sleep as this meditation unfolds, so that you can fall asleep and continue to sleep as this meditation progresses, as this meditation unfolds. When you're ready, we will begin. Sit down or lie down comfortably, and we will begin. Start by noticing your physical self, and start with a gentle noticing of your pattern of breath. By noticing your physical self, noticing how your body feels, and noticing your breathing, we're starting with an observation of ego. Our ego is attached or comes with our physical self. Our ego comes with the physical action of breath. However, through the action of relaxing your body and through the action of concentrating on breath by breath by breath, we are drawn into the moment and gently drawn away from the past or the future. By sitting in the moment, we develop the ability to be present and to move towards enlightenment and peace. So the journey towards enlightenment and peace starts with observing the ego and then being the third person, the witness, looking down upon the ego and recognizing our role to let go of the ego. It's an interesting relationship because we, our souls, our spirits, remain or reside at this time within a body. There is a gentle interplay between the body and the spirit. However, if we maintain that gentle interrelationship, if we maintain that status quo where the spirit happily resides within the body, we will not reach that point of peace. We need to move towards the point where we look down upon our physical self. We see our physical body for what it is. It is a temple in which we reside for this life. Our greater being is our spirit. by breathing in the moment and breathing in the moment and breathing in the moment, we have the ability to be present. When we are fully present, we let go of suffering. Breathe slowly. Not an easy process, but a possible process. Breathe slowly. Notice your physical self. Notice your physical body. Notice your physical body as one would look out of a train, as you travel in a train, and you look out of the train window and you see the landscape flashing past, and you notice the landscape. You notice the landscape. You notice a tree flashing past. You notice fields flashing past. You perhaps notice cows and sheep, the landscape. Notice your body, your physical body, as you would be a spectator or a witness to the world passing by. And you are the traveller. In this situation, your spirit is the traveller and your body is the landscape. See your body as the landscape. The goal of this meditation is to let go or free yourself from suffering in order that you can sleep. To free yourself from suffering, we need to understand and identify what suffering is. To identify what suffering is, we need to see the careful relationship, the fragile relationship between body and spirit. The spirit is the traveller and the body is the landscape. The body passes by, just whooshes by, it disappears. It's here and then it's gone. We are babies and then we age. Our skin changes. Times pass, but our spirit remains the same. Recognize the difference between spirit, the traveller, and the body, the landscape. Here one moment and gone the next. Breathe slowly in through your nose and out through your nose. Acknowledge that you feel a sense of suffering at this time. So acknowledge that feeling of suffering. Feel the heaviness of the suffering. How does the suffering feel in your body? How does the suffering feel in your toes, in your knees, in your forehead, in your throat, in your shoulders? Identify and notice how suffering feels. How does suffering feel? Identify and feel suffering. Feel the suffering. Now, have intention. The intention here is to sleep. Why do we want to fall asleep? Why do we want to go to sleep? We want to go to sleep so that we may heal, we may rest, we may restore, and we may have a sense of stillness. That's why we sleep. In order that we may be the best possible person that we can be, we need to sleep each day. Suffering affects our ability to fall asleep. So let's just sit with that for a moment. When we suffer, our ability to sleep is affected. Just sit with that. Make the intention, the conscious decision, the conscious intention that you are going to fall asleep. Say to yourself, I make the conscious intention that I'm going to fall asleep. And then acknowledge the frustration between the two intentions. One intention is that you feel a sense of suffering. And the other intention is that you have decided to fall asleep. Now I've said the words that you have the intention to have suffering. Where does suffering exist? Suffering exists in our minds. Nobody does suffering towards us. Nobody makes us suffer. We choose what mindful state to have at any given time. It's not an easy decision. It's not a straightforward decision. It's a decision that comes with practice. So when we suffer, there is an intention behind that to suffer. The intention to suffer comes from wanting, comes from attachment, and comes from desire. It comes from expectation. Suffering comes from the shoulds and the musts of the world. Now let's have a look at our suffering. Perhaps you have a relationship suffering. Let's look at the relationship suffering. Perhaps the communication is not as you would like it to be. Perhaps there may be deceit. Perhaps there may be betrayals. Perhaps there may be an environment which you are not content with. The suffering is that you would like the situation to be otherwise. You have an expectation. Perhaps you expect your partner to be honest. Perhaps you expect your partner to be faithful. You are placing your peace, your contentment in the hands of someone else. So you are giving away your spiritual contentment to another human being. In order to free ourselves from suffering, the first step is to acknowledge that we control our minds. We decide the shoulds of the world. We decide the shoulds of the world. Breathe slowly. Slow your breathing down. We decide whether to impose those shoulds on other people. We decide whether to expect those expectations. We decide whether to depend our happiness on another person's behaviour. We decide. We control our mindful self. We control our spiritual self. How do we control our spiritual self? Through the practice, the regular, repeated practice of meditation. Breathe slowly and relax your body. Perhaps your suffering is not from a relationship. Perhaps your suffering is from a work situation, a friendship situation. Perhaps you expect something from work. Perhaps there is a should, an implicit should within the expectation. Perhaps you want people at your work to behave in a particular way. Perhaps you would like friends to behave in a particular way. Perhaps you desire a particular friendship situation which does not exist. By wanting, by desiring, by expecting, we give our power away. We actually have the power ourselves within our mind, but we give it away to the wanton control of others. By doing so, we lose control of our happiness and our peace, and our sense of peace becomes like a rudderless boat in a storm. We regain control over the rudder by practicing mindfulness. Breathe slowly in through the nose and out the nose. Perhaps you have suffered some loss of a relationship, illness, death, and there is a sense of loss there. In order for there to be a sense of loss, we need to choose that there was attachment before the loss. You cannot lose what you are not attached to. If you are attached to something, you may perceive that you lose it. If we do not form an attachment to a person, to a friendship, to a work situation, we cannot lose it. And here we come back to the relationship between ego, our body, and our spirit. The ego wants, the ego desires, the ego needs attachment, the ego needs approval, the ego expects a relationship to be in a certain way. The ego always looks to the future and the ego always looks to the past. The ego is our social being. The ego thrives and needs attachment. Attachment can never be satisfied because everything in life is transient and everything changes. So the moment we become attached, we give up our control over our happiness. Breathe slowly, slow your breathing down. Breathe slowly. Now I understand that this is a challenging process. And I understand that as an ego, as a human being, we become detached. We yearn for attachment. We are trained, we are socialized to seek attachment. seeking attachment only brings unhappiness. At the same time, to have no attachment whatsoever is not possible when we reside within a physical body. Because the physical body in itself has desire, the desire to eat, the physical desire to sleep, the physical desire to rest. As a spiritual being, we can look down upon these desires and detach from them. And on a daily basis, practice meditation to detach ourselves from suffering. Breathe slowly. Relax your body. Let's address the suffering we have at this time. Let's name the suffering. So whether the suffering is to do with a relationship that you are experiencing or you choose to experience, because you choose to experience the relationship. It's not a physical entity. You're choosing to experience this relationship or this career situation or this friendship. You choose what feelings and what thoughts to have around this environment of thought and emotion. You choose what values to place against this situation. So if another person has not been honest with you, you choose how to feel. You choose whether to feel tolerance or forgiveness or empathy or withdraw. If we have a glass of water in our hands, the glass of water can represent our spirit, and we can shake the glass of water so it moves to and fro and spills out onto the floor. If we stop shaking the glass of water, the water finds its own balance, and so is our spirit. Rather than thinking and thinking and thinking and ruminating in thought, allow the waters of your spirit to find their own level. We cannot control the behavior of another person. We can control our own feelings, thoughts, and state of mind. We choose what emotional state to be in. Suffering, the definition of suffering, is how we choose to interpret the events that go on around us. If we have suffered loss, or we choose to suffer loss, the loss can only exist because of the attachment we place upon that situation. If we choose to feel betrayed, it is only because of the values, the emotions we have invested into that relationship and the beliefs we've had around the expectations of that relationship. There has been wanting, from our point of view, into that relationship. We want a particular result. We want a particular end. We want a particular behavior. Who is doing the wanting? We are doing the wanting. We are the being that is doing the wanting towards another person. The wanting is self-focused. We could say that the wanting is selfish. The wanting is not unconditional love. So the wanting, the desire, takes us away from our enlightened purpose to detach with unconditional love. And the wanting brings us back into ego, a self-centered sense of ego. Now, of course, if we are in a situation that is somewhat destructive and lacking in love, then we can choose to withdraw from that situation so that we can be the best version of ourselves that we can. If we have lost a relationship to death or other circumstances, we can choose to celebrate the life of that person and to celebrate the relationship and remember the goodness within that relationship. We can choose to do that. When we experience an experience in the moment, we can choose to focus on the myriad of feelings and highlight some of the feelings and minimize other feelings. So if a relationship has come to an end, we can choose to remember the good memories and withdraw from the not so good memories. This does not mean to manipulate a memory so that it loses its truthfulness. It just means adjust your perspective and look down upon the experience with some global perspective. We have one life. Time is only real in the moment, so we only have this moment. All that we can be sure of is this moment, and in this moment we choose whether to be grateful or whether to feel any other emotion. We choose suffering because we choose suffering. It's not an easy process. There are triggers which influence suffering. However, we choose how to respond to the triggers. So other people behave as they behave as they behave. We have no choice over how another person, another soul, makes a decision to interpret their life. We choose whether to be hurt, whether to laugh, whether to forgive, whether to understand. We choose whether to suffer in response to another person's random behaviours, or we choose whether to learn. We can choose to grow. We can choose to focus our intention upon caring for others following loss. Breathe slowly. Slow your breathing down. Now we're going to go through an exercise to free ourselves from suffering. We're going to go through an exercise to transcend ego. We are going to practice rather than focusing upon achievement. We can only achieve in the future. We are going to be rather than focus upon success. Success can only occur in the future. We are going to practice in the moment right now. Breathe slowly. Say to yourself, I understand that the experiences I have experienced may be perceived by some as suffering. I understand that the triggers which led to these experiences are inherently challenging. However, I choose the higher path of enlightenment. I choose to rise above these experiences, which some would call experiences of suffering. I choose to see these experiences as pathways towards my spiritual growth. I choose to see these experiences as rocks underfoot. I will step onto these rocks, I will step over these rocks. I will move forward, walking in each step as I go. I choose not to resent, I choose to grow in the moment. I choose not to be bitter, I choose to understand in the moment. I choose not to look back, I choose to be in the moment, at this moment, at this moment, at this moment, at this moment. I choose not to ruminate, I choose to be in stillness. I choose not to be attached, I choose to celebrate life and all that it entails. I choose not to expect, I choose to accept. I choose not to feel anger, I choose to understand and develop perspective. Breathe slowly, relax your physical self. Choose to control your physical self. Notice whether your physical self holds any residual suffering. Look down upon your body and notice whether your body is holding any residual suffering. Notice that we choose this suffering. Choose to detach from suffering. Say to yourself, I have the choice. I choose whether to attach, whether to want, whether to desire, or I can choose to let go, detach, accept, and be. I choose to accept in my feet. Release your feet. I choose to detach in my legs. Release your legs. I choose to let go in my torso. Let go your torso. I choose to tolerate in my face. Soften your face. I choose to have perspective in my throat. Relax your throat. I choose to be in the moment in my spine. Release the suffering in your spine. Release the suffering in your body. Let the suffering go. Let the suffering go. Say to yourself, I give up wanting in my physical self. I give up desire in my physical self. I give up shoulds and musts in my physical self. I give up wanting a particular situation a particular relationship, a particular behaviour from another person. I give up the wanting. I give up the wanting. Suffering only comes from attachment. The attachment to wanting a particular goal, result, behaviour from an external force, relationship, person, environment. Release the suffering. Say to yourself, I no longer want, I simply be. I no longer expect, I simply accept. I no longer desire, I no longer desire, I am present in the moment. My spirit lets go of suffering, and my spirit at this time resides within my body. It's time to fall asleep. It's time to fall asleep. I choose to fall asleep. I choose to love myself. I choose to love my physical temple, my body at this time. I choose to accept my body's transience. I choose to accept all the loving spirits around me. And I choose to love all life around me. I choose to go to sleep. Sleep now. Breathe slowly. Slow your body down. Slow yourself down. Sit in the present. Neither looking back or forward. Sit in the present. Neither resenting or wanting. Sit in the present. Acceptance. Being grateful for the souls we have in our life. Being grateful for the gifts we have. Understanding that gifts do not last. Everything changes. Everything has an end. Be grateful for what is right now today. Be grateful for what is right here today. Be present. Let go. Breathe slowly. Relax your physical self. Relax your face, shoulders, arms, fingers, feet. Relax your knees, hips, spine, lower spine, back of the shoulders, left shoulder, right shoulder, back of the knees, ankles, soles of the feet, toes. Relax your physical self. Let go. You are loved. Relax your physical self. Let go. You are loved. Relax your physical self. Go to sleep. You are okay now. Go to sleep. It's time for sleep. You are okay. It's time for sleep. It's time for sleep. You are okay. Sleep now. Sleep now. You are loved. You are okay. Sleep now. It's time for sleep. You are okay. It's time for sleep. It's time for sleep. You're okay. Sleep now. Sleep now. You are loved. You are okay. Sleep now. It's time for sleep. You are okay. It's time for sleep. It's time for sleep. You are okay. Sleep now. Sleep now. You are loved. You are okay. Sleep now. It's time for sleep. You are okay. It's time for sleep. It's time for sleep.